Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. We're going to get started in just a minute, but before we get started on our webinar, what we've learned recruiting and hiring during a pandemic, I wanted to go over a little housekeeping things. Participants are muted and the video is not activated. If you have a question, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen where you can type in your question. We will answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. Now, in preparation for this webinar, we reached out to a lot of HR professionals about how recruiting is going for them. Like us, some of you are still recruiting and others are gearing up to start when everything opens back up. I hope you learned some tips on how to move recruiting and interviewing forward during this time. So has anybody seen this Twitter account? It's called Room Rater. Don't look at it now, but wait until the webinar is over, but go check it out. It's a fun twist on someone evaluating all the video calls that are going on currently. The angle of the camera, the background, the lighting, everything. It's pretty funny. And he rates it like out of a 1 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. Like us, we all know that your first impression is very important, whether it's on the phone or in person or via video. And during this webinar, one of the topics that we will discuss is about coaching candidates and companies on creating a good impression via social distance interviewing. Cameron Smith and Associates is an executive search firm that specializes in C-suite, consumer good, retail, and construction positions here in Arkansas and across the country. We also have an outplacement and career coaching division, which is where this webinar is coming from. My name is Beth Pittman, and I'm a senior partner here at Cameron Smith. My focus is recruiting director level positions and above. I have corporate experience with Walmart and third-party experience, as I have been with Cameron Smith for 10 years now. And this is Christy.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Christy Martin, and I have been working in human resources for about the last 17 years, but I've been the last 7 with Cameron Smith and Associates as a recruiter, and then I also oversee our career coaching and outplacement services at CSA. So I'm really happy that everyone's joined us today, and we're going to jump right in. The first topic that we're going to discuss is recruiting. So this is really a time where HR can step up and be a partner with their business partners. Oftentimes you might find it hard, as I have in the past, to get the respect that we feel as HR partners, but this is really an excellent time to step up and be that creative voice of reason for our business partners, come to the table with creative ideas and really kind of be a shining light to help reduce fear in the organization as we all are trying to work back towards what that normal work routine might be. So as best I've heard from a variety of our HR partners in various industries that they're still recruiting, they're still onboarding during this time, even though several of our partners did say that they have halted or they're kind of taking a step back to assess their business and their hiring at this point. There's still a lot going on. And so heard from them that and continual adjustments are very critical. And so that's what we're going to talk a bit about today, is about planning and evaluating your processes for hiring and onboarding. And hopefully you'll have a few takeaways from this that'll help you think a bit more creatively. So when we talk about recruiting, what we have learned through our processes as we've been recruiting during this time for our clients at Cameron Smith is communication is so key. And we have also that if you disappear via communication, it gives people a sense that you might have closed. If you disappear from communication channels regularly with your partners as a business, it gives people a sense that you might have closed, which then from a hiring standpoint gives candidates a sense that they might be unsure about your business or unsure if that would be a stable place that they would want to look at when you present them with an opportunity. So we've heard that it's very critical to keep up with social media posting, with marketing efforts, things like that, the wayside at this time, because it seems like the world has gone on hold. But from a hiring standpoint, candidates are still going to be looking at those things, and they're still going to be watching what you're doing as a company. Posting and communicating is the lens that they might be viewing that through. So this would be a great time to share some great things that your company is doing. If they're doing some community outreach, if you're extremely busy at this time and you're just really finding some ways to work creatively, different offerings that set you apart as a company, you might consider some of those things in your communication strategy that would hit candidates in kind of a sweet spot for them, where they'd be looking for something or a company that's doing things creatively. And then another thing that we've seen through communication is reaching out to candidates, following up with those people that were already in the, to let them know the next steps, not letting them get lost in the shuffle as things may have gone on hold, but communicating with them so that when that opportunity opens back up, or if you want to consider them for something else in the future, you had that consistent communication throughout this time. We see in our business all the time that time kills deals. And so we continually keep up that communication with our clients and candidates so that we can keep the flow of information happening and no one feels left behind. Contacting clients and business partners to check in and offer services, even just suggest things that maybe they didn't know that you could help them with. This could be your internal business partners that you're reaching out to, just to see if they're having any issues or problems, things that you might not have been aware of, and they weren't really aware that you could help with that. So again, that's back to that partnership with your business partners, to just kind of keep up the communication, that extra check-in, and then that allows you to think creatively. And I think we've seen so much of that in the industry and the community right now, of businesses and organizations coming up with really creative ideas on ways to keep their business afloat and then reach out to the community. And our HR worlds are no different. And so a lot of what we'll talk about today is thinking about creative solutions and how do you hire, onboard, and then be a better partner within your firm. And when you're thinking about recruiting as well, we want to think about the different options that we have and the different options that candidates have right now. We find that a candidate mindset 3 months ago, where they may have told us they were very happy at their company, they weren't looking at moving, those have changed drastically. Things have shifted in everyone's world. And so what someone may have told you 3 months ago could be drastically different now. They could have gone through a layoff in that time, had their pay cut. They could be just not happy with how the company is managing this time. And so we are seeing candidates in a few different camps whenever we talk to them. Either they're not interested in looking for a job at all because this is a vast amount of change in their life and they're not looking to enact more change by moving jobs. They might be just ready to explore jobs because they're worried about their company. They're worried about the stability in the future, or there could have been some things that transpired over the last 3 months they weren't happy with, or they've been laid off. So as we contact candidates regularly, this is what we're hearing from people in the market, and it doesn't matter what industry they're in. And so as you're thinking about candidates that passed or we're trying to recruit, you might want to revisit those people and see where their mindset's at now. And it might be surprisingly different than what you thought you knew about that person. When you are recruiting for positions, you want to talk about what's setting you apart and why they should choose you. We're moving into a time where candidates will be more hesitant to move in some cases. They're really going to weigh their options carefully. And so you're going to have to do a bit more selling of your company and what is in it for them and what makes you unique as a company. And so pulling those marketing pieces together and maybe even creating some new things that should help when you're talking to candidates to really sell them on the opportunity and maybe pull some of those more hesitant people across the fence. Another tip is to anticipate some future hiring demand. As you look at your industry and your location, I know we have people on the call from all different industries, and so the demand is going to be different by location and by your sector. And so you want to kind of be ahead of the curve. If you're not already anticipating your future needs as a company, but then also what is the competition within your location? How many restaurant jobs are going to be opening up all at the same time in the next few weeks, and anticipating how do I get ahead of that curve in recruiting people? How do I act creatively now to begin that marketing of what opportunities that I need filled? And so you anticipate that demand. You might be in a position where there's not going to be a lot of demand for that same type of candidate within your location. And so you wouldn't have to necessarily work as hard at this, but something you want to be thinking about. And candidates and hiring markets are changing very rapidly. So continue to evaluate the right talent, evaluate aptitude and attitude over just someone's skill set. As things are changing rapidly and hiring might be a bit more difficult right now, it seems easy to just take the correct skill set versus the right fit with the company. And so making sure that you're still concentrating on a candidate's attitude, what's bringing them to the market, what are their motivators, and their aptitude for growth, their aptitude to stay with the company and transition into multiple positions. And where is that person going to take you in the future? So not losing sight of those items as you're recruiting, when it might be, in your case, there's a lot of spaces to fill at the moment, continuing to find that best available athlete. So I'm going to throw it over to Beth, and she's going to talk a bit about interviewing.
Okay. On interviewing, I always want to start off with saying, Christy, just reiterate what Christy said in terms of this is an opportunity for HR to really help that senior leadership team, really help them out getting out in front of this. And so the first thing that I think you need to realize is that we need to put as much online as possible. So applications, assessment, anything that you can put online, that needs to be happening. The other thing that I would say is map out the interview process before starting, and that's from start to finish, from your perspective, from the hiring manager's perspective, from the candidate's perspective, so that everybody knows what the interview process is. Make sure all the interviewers understand the process and their role. This is also a good time to go back and craft some really good questions that really dig into the candidate's background. And assigning questions to interviewers might make things go a little bit smoother. We have found that hiring managers are really struggling with this whole video conferencing, and they get on a call and they immediately start asking maybe personal questions that aren't really relevant or legal. And so we really want to make sure that we continue to coach them on the right questions to ask and what their role as an interviewer may be. So if they understand what that is going forward, it will make things run smoother. Make a plan for candidate follow-up early and often to keep people engaged. As Christy mentioned, employment is constantly moving around right now. We're in a really weird time. And so candidates are really looking at lots of different things. So a candidate that may be interested today may not be interested tomorrow because they have another opportunity. So making sure that you follow up early and often to keep people engaged. And I've learned that people, they don't necessarily, they would like to get the job, but they want to have some feedback. So even if you don't have feedback right away, it's still important that you keep them posted quickly and keep them engaged. Our goal here is to be as close to an in-person interview as possible. So anything that you can do to make them feel more connected and so that they don't miss the in-person interview, that's very beneficial. So we're going to talk about the different types of interviews. Y'all know what these are. The very first one's phone and video interviews. Don't be afraid to have more than 1 or 2 phone calls. Have as many calls as necessary. We've really gotten to where HR would do the first screen and then you would hand it off to the hiring manager. The hiring manager would have a screen when they would do a video call. And so they still had a few questions. The candidate continues to have questions. And so it's okay to have more than 1 or 2 phone calls with someone. Maybe you need to have a cross-functional member of the organization on that call. And so just continue to have as many phone calls. Because of the social distancing, this is a great way to continue to engage candidates. Make sure everyone knows how to log into video calls. This is very important. It feels easy, but we've all been a part of a video call where a microphone didn't work, or the video was delayed, or the internet was down, or they just could not figure it out. So you want to make sure that candidates know how to log into video calls, and hiring managers. And that could even be where you have to log in and go through a quick sign-on login with a candidate or a hiring manager to make sure that they understand. And when you've got them on that call, make sure that the background is appropriate. Make sure that they're able to see the candidate and all of that. During the interviews, I would recommend that you assign a lead interviewer for the video call. So if you have several people on it, I would make sure that you have someone that has a copy. Everybody has a copy of the questions. Everybody has, knows who's leading the call, and then has the backup in case that person is dropped off for whatever reason. And that has happened. We've had the person leading the interview, their internet went down, and so the second person was able to pick right up and continue on until the lead person was able to call back in. So it's very important. Have questions created for the panels and give everyone a copy. You want to make sure that everybody knows what's being said. In-person interviews. Create a social distance policy ahead of time and communicate that. We have recommendations, and probably each organization has things that they put into place. A lot of that's working from home, but there could be a situation where you have to have someone come in for an interview. So what does your social distance policy look like? Make sure you let the candidate know that everybody they're going to be speaking with will have a mask on, and that they're either required to wear a mask, or if not, one will be provided for them. There won't be any handshaking. People will be sitting 6 feet away from them. You just want to make sure that you outline that ahead of time, so the candidate, or even discuss that with them, so the candidate will know before they arrive what that looks like. Have masks and sanitizer available for candidates and interviewers. You want to make sure that people feel comfortable with that. Most people have those things, but you want to make sure that you are still providing that. You also want to make appointments, and maybe your social distance interviewing process includes them texting you when they arrive, and you going out to their car and escorting them into the building. You want to make sure that those appointments and everything's outlined, so that you have as little social contact with people that are in the building as possible. So only the people that are absolutely necessary need to be with the candidate. Next. Okay. So I also read yesterday, actually, just where some organizations are providing, if they have people coming in, they're having a person dedicated to be the sanitizer person, and they go in and sanitize the room before and after the candidates come in. So that's something else you could do. One of the things is giving candidates a sense of environment and culture. So, the thing that we hear is, we really want to get a feel for what the culture of the company is. So be creative to give the best first impression of your company. And that may start with the telephone call, that may start with a video conference, and that may be the one-on-one. You don't know what that looks like. So making sure, like Christy mentioned, that you're continuing to stay out on social media, you're continuing to market your company, you're creating documents or marketing information that you can share with the candidate. Ensure the right players are doing the interview, the best representatives of your culture. So you want to make sure that you've got the right people doing the interview, that they know what they're doing, that they're able to sell the candidate on the company, and that they're able to accurately give information around the job. Understand the candidate's motivations and how you can sell them on those aspects. You know, that changes. If you had a person or a candidate that was in the process before this started, their motivations will be different. We've talked about that. So understanding constantly what their motivation for starting a new position would be, and make sure you hit on that. Have the CEO and other key members of the organization create videos to push out to potential candidates, new hires, and etc. If they can't physically call the person or talk to the person or be on a video, have them record something about the culture or what it looks like to work at their organization. That's a personal message that a new hire or a new candidate would really be interested in hearing about. Virtual tours of the office space, facility, or your other buildings. I would definitely, you know, this may be left up to HR to physically go around and do a video tour of your office space or your facility. Think about that. Coach hiring managers and interviewers on being sensitive. There are a range of comfort levels, so requests and general conversations need a new level of sensitivity. This is really important when you think about having people come into your organization and you've let them know that they're welcome to wear a mask, and every candidate that's come in has worn a mask except for this last candidate. You don't know why they're not wearing a mask or if they're wearing a mask. So what you want to do is not take that personally. If you offer a tour of your facility or your office space and they choose not to take it, don't take it personally. You have no idea their situation, and you should coach your hiring manager to honor that. This is a different time, which brings us to that unconscious bias. It's very easily can happen during this time. It happened to us early on during this whole new interview process. We had been interviewing people via video conferencing and had just done candidate after candidate after candidate. We got to the very last one after a long, long day, and the person couldn't get their microphone to work. And immediately, this candidate didn't look as strong as the other candidates. I had to cancel the hiring manager that just because it took a little bit longer for her microphone to work, she was still a good candidate. And so it just goes back to my tip of making sure the candidates know how to get on Zoom. Does anyone, candidate or interviewers, need a practice web session prior to the actual interview to ensure success? This is a question you need to be asking yourself every time. And I will tell you that the candidate who struggled with the microphone was the top candidate. So you just never know what that looks like.
Okay.
Also,
Oh, go ahead, Beth.
I was just going to say, this is a good time for you to realize that candidates are doing their research on your company as well. They're reading what's written on Glassdoor. And if you have internal candidates writing about how their company is treating their employees during this time, that's going to come up during an interview. So be mindful of how your company is responding during this time with their employees. Go ahead, Christy.
Okay, so once you've made it through all the interviewing process and you find yourself at the hiring stage, some things that you might want to think about as you, or probably well before you get to that point of making someone an offer. We are having additional conversations with our clients and the leadership about onboarding and extending offers without even meeting a candidate face-to-face. We're definitely seeing many people hired just via web conference interviewing, which is unusual in our space. And so I can see a new norm happening there. But you still could have leadership that once it gets down to that stage is just not comfortable with extending an offer and wants to prolong the process or just wait another month until we could bring that person into face-to-face. And so you want to make sure that you're not caught off guard by that and have those conversations early and often to reiterate that this is the process we're moving towards, and we could potentially lose a great person because we would prolong the process. Reference checks are definitely now more important than they ever have been because you're not able to meet that person face to face, which just gives everybody an additional comfort level. Having some great references, maybe if that's not a normal part of your process, it's something that you begin doing now, is getting those additional touch points about candidates before you make that offer. And then you want to keep in close communication with candidates throughout the process, and maybe even closer than you normally would. If interviews prolong out a few weeks, then you just kind of keep a candidate in the loop during that time. This might be a time where you'd want to do some additional touch bases with them each week. We're seeing that hires are happening much quicker now due to the speed of the process. When people are able to do Zoom interviews in their living room, and they're not having to book plane tickets and travel to a headquarters and interview with that last round of executives, then the process for hiring and making an offer is moving very fast. So if you have candidates that might or might not have disclosed to you that they have a couple opportunities happening, you could be caught off guard as that person receives an offer from another company. So that's where it's critical to keep in communication with your candidates, and then keep in communication with them even after they've accepted an offer with you. If the start date is even 2 weeks out, maybe it's a month out because you're hoping they could start back in the office. You want to keep in communication with them, because any of those other opportunities they may have been talking with, it's very easy to just continue doing a web interview, continue having some phone conversations that they might not have entertained if that was a plane ticket or a travel to a headquarters in the past. So those other opportunities could come up between the time of the offer and their actual start date. So just again, communicate, communicate, communicate. As we're looking at onboarding, we're finding across the board that onboarding looks very different now. As people are being hired, interviewed, hired via web conferencing and web interviewing, and now they're being onboarded without going to a physical location. It's just very foreign, and a lot of companies are having to quickly evaluate their processes. And so something that you can really be ahead of the curve and can again make you look like a stellar partner with your business unit by having these things ironed out ahead of time. You want to evaluate processes like your new hire paperwork, things that might have been signed on the first day when they come into the office, your IT setup for that person, making their first few days and weeks be successful because they have the tools that they need, whether it's the hardware, computers, cameras, or it's the passwords and things like that. How do you get that stuff set up and ready to ship out so that they can be successful on their first day, especially if they're doing onboarding and training via video? They need all of those equipment pieces to get that done properly. What you don't want is someone who's been excited about joining your company to kind of be sitting there on the first week because they don't have the tools that they need and they're raring to go, but they are lacking a lot of those connection points. So thinking about that setup, orientation videos and packets, moving those to an online, or it might even be a web conferencing type of scenario where you have a few new hires on and you're sharing screens and going through some orientation videos and things. What we caution people on is not to delay those until you feel like you could get back into the office and complete that at that time. There's a lot of critical pieces that are shared, and I know you guys know this, a lot of things that are shared in those initial new hire steps that if you delay that for a month or two, that can really be detrimental to the candidate or the company. Ethics and legal issues that really need to be taken care of. And so delaying those things could really end up being a bad situation for the company and the candidate. And as well, this is your time to set that candidate up for success. They're already in a different type of scenario doing this. They've probably never done this type of an onboarding with the company. And so they're already feeling uncomfortable with some of these things. So the more that you can help them feel comfortable, feel welcome, feel a part of the team is going to be critical for their success and their longevity at your company. What you don't want to be doing is hiring someone and hiring again in 6 months because those beginning pieces just did not help them to feel a part of the company, and they went with one of those other opportunities that they kind of had on the hopper as well. And then you want to think about training. So often training ends up being sitting beside someone at their desk and watching what they're doing, attending meetings with that person, how does that look now? If you're doing video meetings with clients or business partners, how is that person being conferenced in? Really making that training aspect look seamless. And again, making them feel a part of the team and thinking through how are we going to make this the best we can without the normalcy of being in the meeting room and sitting next to somebody watching their computer. So that's going to take a good amount of coaching with your staff and your hiring team to figure out what does that look like for them? What does your normal training process look like? How do we go ahead and map that out so that everyone is aware of what needs to happen and the intentionality that we need to have with this process? And then following up on that as an HR team is probably a good effort to talk with the candidate and the hiring team of how is that going? Are we following what we set out to do? Are all these things getting checked off? And so you're hearing from both parties to make sure that that process is running smoothly. On that note, having HR and other essential personnel to follow up with the company and that candidate initially to answer all of their questions as you have that initial call, or maybe you have a call with them on the first day for onboarding, making sure that you're following up again over the next few weeks as they're having more questions. Some things may not be going the way that they planned. They're trying to set up benefits and IT things, and you want to be in constant communication to, again, make sure that they're successful in those first few weeks. Setting up some regular check-ins with new hires for the hiring manager and HR. As you set off this training schedule, it could be that some of the peers to that person might be doing a lot of the training, and that hiring manager could be a bit more removed during the process. And so just ensuring that the hiring manager is making some additional intentional steps to check in with that new hire, as well as you as an HR person. And so those things might feel foreign to what the process used to look like, or they would be running into that person in the office or the hallway, and they would have that regular check-in. Well, now it needs to be a scheduled event. So just helping your hiring managers to not lose sight of those little nuances. Something that we've heard from several of our HR partners is to assign a mentor, and we think it's a great idea. This could be someone even off the team that would mentor them more in cultural aspects of the company, help them to get a good feeling of the company and the history and just the atmosphere, even though they can't physically be present. And so assigning a mentor for new hires is something you might not have done, but you'd want to consider as a creative idea at this point to help someone feel very welcome and familiar with the organization. And then you want to make a plan for those new hires once the office opens back up, or once things get into a normal groove within the company. And so this could be 3 months down the road for some people, and you don't want to have those people get lost in the shuffle. Make sure that everyone hired during this kind of quarantine time is given that equal chance whenever they first come to the office, because it will be a new transition for them. More than they've already been through. So some time to familiarize them with the office space and protocols within the office. It's easy to lose sight as someone's worked here for 3 or 6 months that they would know those things, but not forgetting that they actually haven't been in the space before. Ensuring that they have the needed equipment, the things that they had at home could be just the bare minimum, and there's some additional things that they would need in the office, or that you might have offered them in the office, like a larger monitor or things like that, a phone setup. And so thinking about what will they need when they get in the office? How do I anticipate those needs and have that stuff ready and prepared for them as we anticipate moving back into that space? And then schedule initial in-person meetings or lunches. They've probably become well aware and familiar with their coworkers by that point, but forgetting that not meeting face-to-face has some challenges. And so just those initial in-person meetings or lunches that might need to be pushed a little bit, and not forgetting that even though they've been here a while, just meeting over video or talking on the phone, there's a whole other step that you could take, and that would just really help to solidify their involvement at the company and build that longevity for them as a great hire. So that is a lot of the tips and tricks and creative ideas that we wanted to share today. And then we definitely wanted to leave some time for questions and answers. If you have that Q&A option on your Zoom menu, you can write us a question and we'll be happy to answer those. So we'll be watching that. And then we also have a poll that we wanted to share about future webinar topics. And I'm going to put that out so you can also answer that in the polling section.
Okay. Well, we actually do have a question, and I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Do you see working from home, remote work becoming more common in the future? I think a lot of companies are having this discussion right now. They're seeing that a lot of people are working from home, and it saves on overhead, which many companies need to find ways to reduce costs. So I definitely think this is going to be an ongoing conversation. I think people are going to continue looking at that. And so this may be the new normal. I don't think everybody can do it, but I definitely think that is one of the things that will happen. Let's see. Oh, and then we had one other one. Will hiring processes happen via video interview more in the future? I think so. I think cost savings, which many businesses are looking at, even with the overhead of having an office, and then the how fast the video conferencing is gonna, it's cost savings, it's fast. I also think that people are going to see how well it works. I mean, obviously this is a trial period, so if people think that this is a good way to hire people, I think they're definitely going to see more of that. Someone's raising their hand. Christy, can you get them? Can you unmute them?
Yep, just a minute. Oh, just trying here.
So do you think more video interviews will lead to more video resumes in the future? Potentially. I think, especially if a lot of things go online, I think people are going to be very interested to see video resumes, but I think that is kind of far down the line. I don't know. I haven't seen very many video resumes currently. Maybe if they're in marketing or something like that, they might put together a program like that. Have you had any pushback from hiring managers that don't like video interviewing? And if so, how do you counter it? Not a lot of pushback. I know that some hiring managers don't like it, and a lot of times the reason they don't like it is because they're not comfortable with it. So what we've been trying to do is walk them through it, set up those ahead of time, give them training on it so that they understand, what it looks like and how it works. But we've had pretty positive response with it. Have you seen an increase in career coaching with candidates trying to prove their video interview skills? Yes and no. I think people are, yes, in terms of, I think people want to make a good impression. And this was something that we coached people on all the time when there would be video calls prior to COVID-19. Making sure the camera is at the right angle, making sure that you have a pleasant background in the back, making sure your cat's not running around, those kinds of things. But I definitely think that since COVID-19's happened, people are not home alone anymore. So there's children and there's dogs barking. I think people are a lot more flexible and understanding than they had been prior to COVID-19. So we're just making sure that candidates are trying to be the best they can be during this process. That's what we're finding. So in addition to COVID-19, I definitely wanted to share some information. We've created 2 free videos to help people that have been affected by COVID-19. If you go to our website, you will see there's a banner there, and you can click on the banner and that will take you to the free resources. And these are things that you can send out to associates who have been displaced. It's talking about job search and then also resume. They're great little videos. Like I said, they're free. We also offer additional outplacement packages for groups and individuals. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us through outplacement and career coaching. I appreciate everybody taking time today to visit. And if you have any follow-up questions or anything, feel free to reach out. Christy, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate everybody joining us, and we'd love to hear your feedback. We are going to send out a survey to the participants after the video call, and want to get your feedback on a few different topics and how you enjoyed the webinar. And then thanks for answering the poll about what you might like to see more of in the future.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.